Hello, everyone, and welcome back to That's DPI. I'm Zach, and that's Tyler over there. And this is our Week 4 recap of the NFL. The season is already almost a quarter done. Time is flying, and we have a ton of great stuff to cover for you. This week, we actually do have a ref call of the week that we want to break down. We're going to cover some major storylines like some key injuries, Jackson Dart winning his first start, and blocked kick mania continues. And we're also going to talk about if the Chiefs are back or not. And then, of course, I'll give you guys my fantasy preview. And Tyler will give you guys the must-watch games of this coming week 5. But without further ado, let's get straight into it. We have 2 ref calls of the week, Tyler, and I'll get you presented the first one. You can go ahead and open it up the discussion for us.
Yeah, so also I don't like that you said it's already almost a quarter of the way through the season. Time is flying by right now with this football season. But yeah, the 2 football calls or no calls for that matter that we're gonna look at is from Sunday night last night, Packers versus the Cowboys in the tie football game. This first one is a non-intentional grounding call that occurred with less than a minute left in regulation. The Cowboys would have had their drive stalled if an intentional grounding is called. However, an intentional grounding is not called, and they go on to score a touchdown. So we are going to break down if this is an accurate call or if they should have called intentional grounding here. Go ahead and play the clip, Zach.
Oh, there we go.
So the key that we're looking for is that the ball does not cross the line of scrimmage. Dak Prescott is not outside of the pocket. And is there a receiver in the area? The announcers during the broadcast say there's not a receiver in the area, and so they think that there should be intentional grounding. My thing is this. Go back a little bit. Go back to right before he releases the ball. So right here is about where he releases it. And to me, it's about not necessarily where he is in the pocket, because he is, of course, in the pocket, but is he about to get sacked? Maybe, but a defender does not have him by the shoulders or by the legs. He's not a split second away from going down. To me, yes, the ball does not go across the line of scrimmage, and I don't think there was a receiver in the area. This angle, it shows maybe it slipped. Go ahead and play that. The ball does not come off clean, and he's not being hit. He's still got 2 defenders being engaged by blocks. I don't think this is intentional grounding because I don't think Dak Prescott is in a scenario where he would want to intentionally ground the ball.
Okay, that's a really good point. I didn't even think about that angle because you're right. I've seen it happen in which they don't typically call intentional grounding on 4th down because you're not trying to intentionally ground the ball on 4th down, right? If you ground the ball, it's over. You turn it over. So,
Yeah,
but this is first
and
down.
if he's being hit, if he's got the defender right here on his shoulder, different story. It's like, get rid of the ball to get back to the line of scrimmage. Both the defenders are engaged in a block. I don't think this is intentional grounding because the key word there, like I said, is intentionally.
Yeah, and to your credit, and the announcers did say this on the broadcast, if the ball slips out of the hand, that would indicate that it's ref discretion, right, on whether they call intentional grounding or not. If the ref decides that it is a slip, he's not implored to call intentional grounding. Is that right? How you understand it?
That is correct. Now, if a defender is on him and that's why he doesn't get off a clean pass, that doesn't matter. So if a defender's right here and he's intentionally trying to get the ball out to no one and it doesn't cross the line, that is intentional grounding. But if it's simply just the slip, then yes, it is ref discretion.
And just for context, if the arm is hit and that impedes the throwing motion and the ball comes out awkwardly, that's not intentional grounding. If the arm is impeded and the ball like drops to the ground in front with no receiver in the area, that's not intentional. That's just a QB hit, ball comes out, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. But if he still gets a clean release,
it's grounding. Yeah. The intentional grounding comes from if the quarterback is trying to get the ball out to avoid a sack.
Got it.
And I don't think that's the case here.
Okay, interesting. So you don't deem Rashawn Gary here close enough to warrant an intentional grounding foul.
Correct, especially without Dak Prescott looking at him. He doesn't see 52 right there and then try and do a quick release. He's looking to the left the whole time. The pocket, yes, is collapsing, but to me, this is not intentional grounding. I'm with the refs on this one.
I tend to agree. It's a really hard call to make, and I often see refs not make the call. Here, I'll move on to our next clip. When it's close like that, just because it's not as common of a penalty, and they don't typically call unless it's blatant. And I don't think that this was blatant. I think you could almost argue that it was unintentional. Therefore, like you said, it won't get called in that aspect. So I agree with your breakdown. But here's the second call. And I believe this one happened on the Packers drive in overtime when the Cowboys were up 40 to 37.
And now this is what we're looking for is there pass interference? The call on the field is that there was no pass interference, correct?
That is right. This is another no call. We're breaking down 2 no calls today. So contact.
We see Packers clearly want defensive pass interference. We do see contact, a little bit from both players, but we do see contact. So that's the first thing we're looking for is there contact? And there is contact. But I believe we're also looking for is a play being made on the ball. Now, Zach, you've actually got the rules in front of you. Can you read what those rules state?
Yeah, let me snag those. They're right over here. I'll throw the clip back.
You can't know where the ball is, therefore creating contact. You're not going for the ball. So if the ball's up here and I'm going for the ball and I bump in, I'm going for the ball, making a play on the ball. But if the ball's over here and I'm looking this way, then I'm just deliberately making contact with you. So for me, that first item on the prohibited pieces of contact list, the prohibited items list, is where he commits a defensive pass interference.
Interesting. Okay, so do you mind if we engage in a little bit of debate here?
Absolutely. That is what.
Okay, so you're referencing item A, contact by a player who is not playing the ball that restricts the opponent's opportunity to make the catch. That's
Correct.
the item that you're saying makes
Correct.
this DPI.
Because I am saying that Bland is not making a play on the ball.
Okay, and so I agree with you. When you look at that part of the paragraph, I think it makes a lot of sense what you're saying. The problem is the second part of the paragraph where it says that restricts the opponent's opportunity to make the catch. Let's look at the end here. He gets 2 hands on the football. So can you really, as a ref, when you see Wicks make the back shoulder catch or nearly make the back shoulder catch, can you really say that Bland restricted his ability to make the catch when he gets both hands on the ball and has a really good shot to make the grab?
Yes, because that's happening in a millisecond of time. And when you are bumped over, you are being taken away from your focus. And to me, that contact takes you away from. He almost kind of bumped him into the ball a little bit, is what it did. But if he is not bumped, you can make that argument that like he's not bumped enough to where the physical hands are no longer on the ball, but you are bumped enough that you're no longer focusing on the ball. Your mind is focusing on the contact that was just created. The other angle kind of shows you the sideline angle. I think shows you a little bit more of that as well. The close-up sideline one. Do you have that one?
Oh, I have
this one. Yeah, actually.
Is that the one we're looking at?
Yeah, because I think the contact beforehand, right around here, is where he's having that contact. It bumps him. I understand that the ball kind of falls in his hands, but I think that's more of the ball falling rather than him going to catch it.
Gotcha. And what do you say for Dontavian Wicks, who actually initiates the contact? Like they're both hand fighting, but it looks like this is a shove by Wicks. Shove a Bland out of the way. And so item G, on the acts that are prohibited state that initiating contact with an opponent by shoving or pushing off, thus creating separation. Wouldn't that be the textbook definition of what Dontavian Wicks does right here? He shoves Bland physically out of the way. He's in line with him, number to number. Bland is now not in line with him due to a shove. Would that not indicate OPI, especially since he has a chance to catch the ball?
Let me see it full speed real quick without.
Yeah, let's go full speed on this close-up angle here.
And you can argue that for sure. To me, this is where I don't see a shove. I see a hand placement. And for the viewers here, I'm more pro Cowboys than I am pro Packers personally. The Cowboys game that I went to a couple years ago was a lot of fun. Zach and I are not really allowed to discuss that game, but I had a lot of fun. I'm pro Cowboys, so if there's any bias here, I'm gonna show bias towards the Cowboys. And so me saying that, and so me going against the Cowboys, or me going against the Cowboys here doesn't show bias here, or going against the Packers here. But at the same time, I see a hand placement, but I don't see a shove.
Okay.
Sorry, I rambled for a second there trying to talk about bias and showing that I'm not biased here. But I don't see a shove. I see hand placement to kind of gauge where he's at and then tries to make a play, but he's bumped.
And it's interesting. I think we're going to end up disagreeing on this one because I think what Bland does here is lays a hand on an opponent that does not restrict him in an attempt to make the ball. And so, yes, Bland makes contact with his left hand here on the body. Okay, we're going to slow this down. The refs don't have access to what we're doing right now. So he's going to lay a hand on the body, but it does not restrict his ability to catch the ball because the ball still hits both of his hands for an extended period of time. He's still able to turn. He's not like restricted in his turn to make the back shoulder catch. And laying a hand on an opponent that does not restrict him in an attempt to make a play on the ball is a permitted act. You're allowed to do that per NFL rules. I think that's what Bland did here. And I think that you could also argue that's what Wicks did with his hand placement. So both players are using that item D in the rule book. We're using hand placement in a permitted way that does not restrict the opponent's ability to make a play on the ball. I think both players did that, and this is a good no call.
And this is I'll make kind of one last counterpoint and then kind of an overall theme that I think you and I can agree on this. Is part of the other reason that I wouldn't call OPI is because I do think that the Packers receiver here is making a play on the ball. He's clearly looking at it. He's putting his hands there. He's making a play on the ball. But Bland not turning his head is why I take away his argument to say I was playing the ball.
Gotcha.
And that is why I say that's DPI. But because you and I are having a good debate with good points within the actual written letter of the law, the tweets that are saying that this is an egregious no call, how dare the NFL refs not make a call here, this is so rigged, I think we've at least put that point to bed.
Sure, definitely.
Because we have two rule experts here that see this differently. Yeah, so this is not an egregious no call, whether it be a good no call or not no call is obviously debatable, but egregious and rigged is just out of the question. I think we can agree on that at least.
100%. This falls well within the gray area that exists when officiating defensive pass interference. Part of the reason why this podcast is named That's DPI, because DPI is the most controversial call in football to officiate. It might be the hardest penalty in sports to officiate because you look at other sports, there's clear lined out definitions of what each foul is. You know what a charge is in basketball. You know what a high sticking is in hockey, but you don't
know where the strike zone is in baseball.
Exactly. And you know where offsides are, and you can actually measure it with electronic technology in soccer, but you cannot have a machine officiate DPI. It exists within gray area and officiating. And so when it's this close and when we're looking at it in slow motion over and over again, and we can't determine whether it's fitting with item D on the items that are permitted or item A in the items that are prohibited, I think that it's okay that it was a no call. And if it was called, I think you could argue for it as well. But it certainly wasn't egregious. And our point still stands last week that the refs are doing a good job. I feel like this call is within the margin of error. especially
No,
when there's good points on both sides.
I absolutely agree. And again, I agreed with their no call for intentional grounding. I agreed with their snap infraction that happened in the first quarter. And I think the refs are doing a good job overall. Like, yeah, there's going to be some calls here and there, but let's get into some storylines this week, Zach. I really enjoyed this segment with the ref call. Let's get into some headlines. What happened in week 4 of the NFL this week?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we have to talk about some major injuries that went on in the NFL this past week. As a Lions fan, I don't want to talk about injuries. I'm sick of it as far as I'm concerned.
Oh
But
man.
we lost 3 great players to season-ending injuries this week. First one being Malik Neighbors, another victim of the MetLife Stadium horrid turf. He's done for the year. Fantasy owners everywhere are probably very upset about this. And, the Giants are upset, especially because Jackson Dart just won his first start. Certainly was
He looks
looking up for the
good.
Giants. Yeah. Beat the Chargers, an undefeated team, but Neighbors obviously done. And that's going to be a long road to recovery, too, because it was a knee soft tissue injury or ligament injury, always brutal.
The good thing with Neighbors is that he is a younger player, obviously, but I think his body is more adapted to recover as if he was in year 13. If Kelsey takes that same injury, he's done. There's no
Yes.
coming back from that. Neighbors can at least come back and have a very good long career, and that's the good news for Giants fans. Um, it's also the good news for Dynasty League fans that you can keep him on your roster and still expect him to be a dominant player. But
Sure.
it is very unfortunate that MetLife Stadium has claimed the season of yet another player.
Yeah, something must be done to address that. I mean, it's been said the horse has flies flying around it at this point. It's been beat so much to death, but MetLife clearly has an issue with their turf. But in that same vein, speaking of a player who suffered an injury to the lower body, who may not be able to recover in the same way, you mentioned Kelsey, another former Chief or another player that was a former Chief, in Tyreek Hill on Monday night suffered what looks to be a very serious knee dislocation that could potentially end his season. And if there's any ligament damage, could potentially put an end to his career as we know it. Because 30 plus year old receiver who makes his game on speed, recovering from a soft tissue injury like that is really, really difficult. Exponentially
Yeah,
more difficult as you get older.
yeah, and it's certainly still too soon to know exactly what the injury was, but I saw the video on Twitter that looked gruesome. And Zach, you were telling me offline that that looked worse than Hutchinson's.
I said it looks similar. Upon
Similar,
review,
okay.
and the reason why it could be worse is because Hill is 30 plus and it's a ligament injury. That's tough to recover from. Hutchinson, it looked really bad and it was bad, but it was in a clean leg break. You're able to recover a lot easier from that at any age than you are from ligament damage, just because it's so hard to get those ligaments back to full strength and not increasing your re-injury risk. I think re-injury risk will always be there for an injury like that. So it's just tough.
The thing
It
that
was similar.
concerns me most with Hill is, like you said, he relies on his speed. So even if his ligament returns, his speed may not be what it was.
Exactly. And that would be the big concern for a player like Hill, who operates in the upper echelon of speedy players in the NFL. But there's one more injury I wanted to discuss. And it's kind of something that has been a storyline for the last couple of weeks. Namdi Madubuike, the very talented pass rushing interior defensive lineman for the Baltimore Ravens. He has not played in the last 2 games, but he was officially announced as having a season-ending neck injury. And those can be talked about even more as career-ending, because those upper neck and above injuries, man, they are brutal. And the way that Harbaugh announced it at the press conference today, he said that Madubuike had some things to go over with his teammates and discuss with his teammates before Harbaugh could say some of these things. That makes me think it's very, very serious. And potentially, I mean, he's already out for the season, so it could potentially affect him in next season or even his career. That's a super tragic loss if that's the case. We hope that it's not, but the Ravens lose a massive player early on in the season where they are already struggling.
Well, and with it being the neck, that's such a dangerous area to get hurt, especially with the risk of re-injury. It may be something that he could come back from, but may not mentally want to come back from. And that's
Yeah.
where Harbaugh's comments might come from, is he may discuss the idea of retiring with his teammates, and that decision hasn't been made yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, he may unwillingly step away from the game, or he may willingly step away from the game. But certainly a big loss for the Ravens on defense. So the story with that though is we knew the Chiefs and Ravens, one of them would be 1-3 at the end of the game. But with that loss on defense and them being the team that's now 1-3, what does this mean for the Ravens going forward for this season?
I think that it should spell disaster, to put it bluntly. 1-3 in the AFC is very difficult because there's a lot of teams. I mean, just look at the AFC West. The Chargers are 3-0, and the Chiefs now have the tiebreaker of the Ravens. That's one wild card spot that you may not be able to get. Whether it's the Chiefs or the Chargers that earn that wild card spot, I feel like it still could come down to the end. Mahomes isn't going to give up the division that easily. So, and then there's the Colts, and there's all these other AFC teams that are doing well enough, better than the Ravens, to lose a piece like that for a defense that's already allowed 38 to the Lions, 41 to the Bills, and 35 plus to a struggling, sputtering Chiefs offense. You've got to be scared if you're a Baltimore Ravens fan about the future of this season.
Mm-hmm. I do agree with you. And what I was looking at while you were talking there is I was looking at the Ravens' next 3 weeks. The Ravens' next 3 weeks goes Rams, bye week, Bears. Rams are a solid team. I don't think they're a juggernaut by any means, but they're a solid team. And if the Ravens are struggling, especially figuring out the defense now, they could fall to 1-4 going into their bye week. And then it becomes kind of 50-50 on what that looks like against the Bears. And so I don't think it's panic time for Baltimore, only because of their division. If you win your division, you are guaranteed a playoff spot no matter what the record is. And that's been something that you and I have debated on this show. So the fact that you've got a struggling Browns, a Joe Burrow-less Bengals confirmed he's going to be out for the rest of the season. That's another injury added this week, is that's been confirmed. And then an aging Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh. I still think the door is open for Baltimore. Now, it's a 4 seed and a first-round exit. I think that's kind of where you're looking. But playoff-wise, the door's still open. A home playoff game's still open, I think.
Yeah, the
But you
Steelers
cannot start 1-5. You've got to at least have one more win before you leave the game against Chicago 3 weeks from now. You cannot be 1-6. Then it's done. But I think going into 1-4, normally it'd be out, but this is a weird situation right now.
I tend to agree. I think that I think that maybe the panic meter should be a little further along than you currently have it. But you make some valid points. The Steelers have yet to prove that they can finish a season in recent memory. They've gotten out to great starts. Look what they did with Russell Wilson last year. I think they were like 10-2 at one point. Then they lost to the Ravens, and then they fell to the wild card round. So anything can happen. But you're right. The Ravens it's not going to be easy for the Ravens, especially without a key chess piece on defense. But I think if there's any quarterback that can will a bad team to a potential division championship in a weaker year for them, it's Lamar, especially when you're in a division with the Joe Burrow-less Bengals and the Cleveland Browns. It really is just Steelers-Ravens down the stretch to me. And so the Steelers haven't proven to me that they can finish. So
and in terms of the panic meter, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I had nothing else. You're good.
I was going to say, in terms of the panic meter, I guess it depends on what you consider success. For For me, I consider a successful season winning the division. Obviously, like, as a Chiefs fan, I want to win it all. But if you win the division, that's a solidly successful year. And so to me, like I said, the door's wide open. If a successful season is making a deep push in the playoffs and having a team that can go for it all, then yes, I think it's time to panic in Baltimore if that's your definition of success.
Right. Yeah, no. I think certainly. Certainly, regardless of what our definition of panic is, there are some Baltimore fans that are panicking regardless, because it's hard to be 1 and
Yes, there
3
are.
in the NFL when you're third in your division, when you're expected to win it outright. But moving
Mhm.
on, we're going to jump right to our final storyline, and it's kind of jumping in onto your team's recap. Are the Chiefs back? So I'm going to defer to you. You're going to get to recap a really good win this week that probably made you feel good, better than you ever felt this season.
It was good because when the Chiefs are winning, because of course I work at Arrowhead, and anytime there's an issue in the east side of the stadium, I have to deal with it. But when the Chiefs are winning well throughout a majority of the game, fans tend to stop being jerks to each other. So that made my day a lot smoother. That I only had to deal with a couple people vomiting, but no fights. I did not have to deal with any fights. So thank you, Chiefs, for having an easier day. But are the Chiefs back? To me, I don't think the Chiefs were ever gone. Because the last 3 years, we've seen plays of like, oh, the Chiefs are 2 plays away from being 1-4. All right, well, we're also 1 play away from being undefeated. Like that's just kind of how the years have gone. And I think it's no different this year. Yeah, we started off 1-2. We were a couple plays away from being 3-0 still. So I think the Chiefs always the Chargers played a perfect game and beat us by 3. The Chiefs made a ton of mistakes against the Eagles and lost by 1 score. And then Chiefs made a ton of mistakes while beating the Giants 22-9. So I think the Chiefs have always been there. They just have to connect it all. And I think they certainly connected it all this week. We played Jacksonville. It's on the road against Jacksonville, but it's also Jacksonville. I think it's very realistic to say that the Chiefs could, not will, because you don't take anything in the NFL granted, but it's very realistic that the Chiefs are now 2-2 with only 2 weeks left before Rice is back. One of those games being against the Raiders in Las Vegas, which Andy Reid has historic success against that team in that city. And then Lions, and so we're flirting with at least a 500 record going into Rice's homecoming.
Yeah, no doubt. And I guess, what do you think the secret sauce, the missing piece for Kansas City has been over these last 2 victories? You've stacked 2 victories in a row, massive.
Mm-hmm.
Needed to do that, truly. I hesitate to call them must win, but it certainly is a lot better that you've won those 2. What do you think the missing piece was during that streak?
Turnovers. You have to win the turnover game. Mahomes made a stupid, costly interception against Philly, and it kind of cost them the game. The Eagles went ahead and scored a touchdown on that drive when we could have scored a touchdown on that drive. The Ravens had an interception that we then scored a touchdown on that drive. Those are 14-point swings. So you have to win the turnover battle. We did not win the turnover battle the first 2 weeks. We did win the turnover battle the last 2 weeks.
Gotcha. And I feel like the Chiefs have always been kind of in that zone, especially when you said,
Mm.
oh, the Chiefs are, 2 plays away from being 1-4 or whatever you're saying. That's because the Chiefs play a brand of football where it gets close because they rely a lot on their defense and ball control offense. You're not getting tons of explosive plays. And so if you win
Mm-hmm.
the turnover battle, you're more likely to win those ball control games. So I agree with you. I also think that there are 2 players that I would identify for the Chiefs that have been good. Now I'm curious if you agree with me. The first one being Xavier Worthy. As soon as he comes back, the offense looks way better. And if you have him
Oh yeah.
in that Philly Chargers game, you never know. The Chiefs could hit some actual explosive plays. Worthy looked great, and he gave a spark to the offense that so desperately needed it. Ford allowed the defense to back up a little bit, gave the run game some room. Pacheco even looked better. So Worthy coming back improved so many elements of that sputtering offense. And then on defense, I'm going to identify Noel Williams. Veach has done it again. The Veach has done it again. Noel Williams has the highest PFF grade for coverage out of any player in the NFL. And
Wow.
he's got limited snaps, but it's well north of 90. And I'm curious. I know that he hasn't got very many snaps, and I know that we can't trust PFF, but the eye test also passes. Noel Williams has made a ton of plays in his limited snaps, and he should get more snaps in this Chiefs secondary that I think needed a special player after the departure of Justin Reed.
No, I agree. I think Williams has been great. The obvious is Xavier Worthy. He's
Right.
been extremely explosive. I have nothing to add to that. I agree with everything there. The one other factor that I do want to add is Jawan Taylor. We have crapped on Jawan Taylor for 3 weeks, and I stand by all of this. But if I'm gonna kick you when you're down, you're also deserving of a high five when you're up. He had 0 penalties last week or against the Baltimore Ravens. And that is worthy because that's the thing that we have been saying is you gotta stop committing penalties. I will give you the credit. I will give you that recognition. He did not commit a single penalty against the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, it was great.
And our offense looked so much better.
He actually looked like a competent NFL tackle. It was incredible. And that's one of the other things that you kind of said with the turnover battle. Something that kind of is like an overarching theme with the turnover battle is discipline. If you play a disciplined game, you don't turn it over and you don't commit a lot of penalties. You win a lot of those games. And that's kind of been Andy Reid's philosophy in the Matt Nagy era. As much as we don't like the Matt Nagy era, the Chiefs still win a ton, and they win by being disciplined. And Jawan Taylor stands in direct counter to that most of the time. But look at what can happen when he plays a perfect game. The Chiefs looked far and away like the better team for every quarter. There was never a doubt in my mind. It was incredible. I have not felt like that about the Chiefs for a long time. And I'm sure you feel the same way.
I agree. It's real nice to have that. As much as they win, we don't have a lot of blowouts, and so that felt good. That felt good to see.
Speaking of blowout, the Detroit Lions won 34-10 at Ford Field, facing off against the Cleveland Browns, a team that I might add defeated the Green Bay Packers just a week ago. So certainly not an opponent to look lightly upon. And for the first 3 quarters, it was kind of that Chiefs game script. It was only a 10-point game, and it would have been a 7-point game if the Browns field goal kicker had not missed a kick. It would have been 20-13. But in the fourth quarter, Aiden Hutchinson notches his second sack of the game, strips it away. Lions get a touchdown. Khalif Raymond returns a punt for 65 yards. And then Jake Bates knocks over another field goal, and the Lions run away with it, essentially, in what was actually a very close game, closer than it looked, as they were only down 10 going into the fourth quarter. Did you get to watch the game at all, Tyler?
I didn't get to watch it. You guys played at noon, right?
Yeah, and it was the first game of the season that was blacked out in our area, so I don't blame you if you didn't get to watch it.
Okay.
I had to end up going to a bar to watch it. But some things I observed is Aiden Hutchinson is back. He had a multi-sack game. And the other thing I observed is Jared Goff is on another plane of existence this season. For his first couple of years at Detroit, he is kind of a bumbly guy. When he gets off script, he tends to take sacks, look stupid, and look very immobile. It's really his only big weakness as a quarterback. He's very accurate. He's great pre-snap. He's got a strong arm. He moved about the pocket in a way that I've never seen him do ever in his career against the Browns. And this season, the trend is continuing. For the first time since 1982, the Lions have had 3 straight games where they haven't allowed a sack. So the data supports what I'm saying about Goff. He hasn't taken a sack in 3 weeks, and he just played against Myles Garrett, the best pass rusher we've ever seen in this era right now. Absurd by Jared Goff, and a lot of that is him because you can't block Myles Garrett perfectly on every play, and he was lined up one-on-one against some of our tackles, and he didn't get to the quarterback once. Jared Goff is playing great.
He is, and this is a coaching thing too, because Goff is a good player. He's got a very good mind, but you game plan to avoid Myles Garrett sacks. That's not just something that you just happens. You game plan that, and having a fourth quarter, going into the fourth quarter, having a tight game, and then you just roll away with it in the fourth quarter. That's coaching. That is Dan Campbell doing what Dan Campbell does best, and that's putting fire and energy and passion into his team to be able to do that, while also putting brains into the game plan and the rest of his team to allow it to happen as well.
Yeah.
Coaching and players, just Browns were not going to be able to keep up.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that you bring up coaching because I think that you actually hit the nail on the head. The Lions have always had good players in their recent history. I mean, I grew up watching Calvin Johnson, but the deficit was always coaching. And this is a team that came into the fourth quarter against a team with great players in Green Bay, came back and won it in regulation, down 10 points going to the fourth. And the difference was Matt LaFleur is not as good of a coach as Dan Campbell. It is plain and simple. That's how it is. Dan Campbell has to replace both of his coordinators, and they're faced with the same situation against the same team in the same span of 2 weeks, and one team runs away with it in the fourth, and the other chokes and loses. It's coaching. Like Tyler said, it's a great point, and it's often overlooked because the Lions have so many good players, but the engine behind this has always been Dan and his coordinators and who he brings in.
It's nice that Dan's definitely getting the recognition because with him not being the play caller, correct? Ben Johnson was the play caller, correct?
Yes, Ben Johnson was. Dan Campbell did not call plays.
Correct. Okay, so with Ben Johnson being the play caller, the storyline, especially after week one, was, it's not Campbell. It was Ben Johnson running the show in Detroit. And now look at the situation in Detroit. To your point, nothing's changed. Right. Slow week one start, but yeah, you've got new coordinators and new players. But it's been good old same good Detroit Lions football the last few weeks, and it's Campbell finally getting his flowers.
100%. You hit the nail on the head. And I think that with that, we can move on to fantasy. First, I will spend as little time as possible recapping last week because it was really bad. I don't know if you got a chance to look at some of my picks, but in terms of guys that I told you to swipe right on, I said Darnell Mooney. He was injured in the first half and scored 2 points, so I'm going to give that a wash. Can't predict injuries.
That one, yeah.
I said to swipe right on Michael Pittman. He earned 15 points. I'd say that's a win. And then I said to swipe right on Tetro and McMillan. He scored 10. So not the breakout that I thought, but anything double digits is always solid.
But if you get 10 points out of a flex player, I think that's fine. Yeah. Solid.
So I'm going to give myself a kinda. All right. We're 1.5 points up. I missed on every single swipe left. And we kind of made it a running joke that Tyler just disagrees with every swipe left that I have. And if he did that last week, I don't remember if you did or not. I think you're actually kind of close. You would have been perfect 3 of 3. Quinshon Judkins against the Lions had 21 points. He scored their only touchdown on the day, and they just kept feeding him the ball, despite the fact that he wasn't even that efficient. He had
I think he was a swipe left for me also.
Yeah, we both did. I think that's the only one you actually agreed with me on. And I have no explanation. The Lions played great against the run. They didn't let the Browns control the line of scrimmage. He had no runs greater than 11 yards. He just got 25 carries and scored a touchdown. What do you want me to do?
Did he get passes?
No, not really. I mean, he caught a few, but it wasn't like a pass-heavy day. He got over 20 carries, so it was truly absurd workload. I said to swipe left on Stephon Diggs. I believe you disagreed with me. Flowers to Tyler. Stephon Diggs scored 16 points in a massive win for the Pats. And then
I said he had an opportunity to stand out, and he did.
He did. He absolutely did. He scored a touchdown. He was integral in that win, and he looked good for the first time all season. So right when I say his name, he decides to start looking good. And then, of course, I said DK Metcalf in that Dublin, Ireland game against the Minnesota Vikings. Steelers not only win that game, but DK Metcalf scores an 80-yard touchdown, and he scores 23 points.
I did say to swipe left on him, too. I actually benched him in my own fantasy league and then lost the week. So...
yeah, that was a miss.
We're looking for this week.
I think that a lot of those were kind of anomalies. I'm hoping. So for this week, I only have 2 swipe lefts because I'm so demoralized. But I'll give you my first player, It's T. Higgins versus the Detroit Lions.
I'm a swipe right pending the injury situation in Detroit. Based on the injuries that have occurred in Detroit, I think the Lions secondary is weaker, so I would swipe right.
Are you reading my script? That's exactly what I have written down. Swipe right. Detroit was already having trouble containing big play wideouts with a healthy cornerback room. They lost DJ Reed to a hamstring injury. We don't know the specific details on it, but he will not play against Cincy. And they lost Terry and Arnold to a pec injury, which that doesn't look serious, but it looks serious enough to keep him out for 1 week. And he'll return against Kansas City, but he may not play against Cincy. 2 starting corners on a defense that plays a lot of man and has trouble against big play receivers. T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, you should be starting him regardless. But T. Higgins should definitely be plugged in to your starting lineups this week. Next player I have is Jerry Jeudy, Cleveland Browns wide receiver versus Minnesota.
I like Minnesota's secondary, which is part of why I said to swipe left on DK Metcalf. And then it gets 20 points. I'm going to double down and stick with the Vikings defense. I think last week was a weird outlier because it was in Ireland, and Ireland hates purple teams for some odd reason. So I'm going to stick with the Vikings defense now that they're back in the States. For context to the viewers, I'm referencing Kansas State Wildcats, another purple team losing in Ireland in week 0 this week. But yeah, no, I'm sticking with the swipe left. I like the Vikings defense.
Yeah, and I'm with you there. We're going to swipe left on Jerry Jeudy. He's received 8 or more targets in 3 of his 4 games, but he has only eclipsed 10 points once this season. And that's largely due to the ineffectiveness of Joe Flacco in the Browns passing offense. I don't think that Joe Flacco improves his performance against a Brian Flores Minnesota defense that is stateside and not cursed by whatever the hell is in the air in Dublin. Swipe left on Jerry Jeudy. But moving on, we've got Quentin Johnston, the Chargers wide receiver, versus the Washington Commanders.
Johnson's kind of having a bounce back year. He's really been in a you have to be good this year or you aren't going to be employed very longer.
Sure.
And I think he's been doing well. First 3 weeks were great. I didn't get a chance to see his numbers this past week, but I'm starting to become more of a believer in Quentin Johnson this year. I'm gonna swipe right.
Yeah, and I'm with you there. We're going to swipe right on him this week. He's still only being started in 64% of sleeper leagues, despite being the 4th best wide receiver, and that is headlined by a 24-point performance against the New York Giants, where he received 13 targets for 98 yards and a score. He has scored in all but 1 game this season, and he's playing the Washington Commanders defense, which has allowed the 5th most passing yards in the league to this point.
He's giving me the same vibes as Mike Williams from a couple years ago with the Chargers wide receiver 2, who played horribly. He was supposed to be so good and then just always played horrible, kind of like Kyle Pitts now. Only this year he's actually doing good all of a sudden. But the year that Mike Williams went off, it took like half the season for people to realize that he was good that year.
Yeah, and you said Johnston's having a bounce back year. I almost would describe it as a breakout year. He's had nothing to bounce back from. He's been just plain bad since entering the NFL, and now he's just starting to show that potential on why he was drafted so early. And I believe that potential will continue to shine against a bottom 5 unit in passing yards in the Commanders. And my next player is Marvin Harrison Jr. versus the Tennessee Titans.
I want to look at one thing real quick. So I'm going to let you state your case first.
Okay. So for Maserati Marv, we're going to go ahead and swipe right. He's had a very slow start to the season, receiving 6 or less targets in his first 3 games. And aside from a touchdown against the Saints that kind of saved his day, he's been pretty underwhelming for someone who's drafted as highly as he is. But in the second half of the Seahawks-Cardinals Thursday night game, he came alive. He got 10 targets, had his season high in receptions, and he scored a very skillful acrobatic touchdown in the end zone. And his reaction wasn't to celebrate. It was to just sit there on the ground like this. It looked like catharsis for him. He's like, finally, I've gotten over whatever yips, whatever demons that I'm dealing with, and I've caught a touchdown. He's facing the worst team in football, the Tennessee Titans. They were horrible last week. They were just shut out. It's an interconference rival. These teams don't play very much. I think Harrison finally breaks out. He played 100% of snaps. He's primed for a good start again, a bounce back week for sure.
And I agree with you, and this is what I wanted to look at. So I knew he struggled the previous couple weeks, but had ended up having these numbers this week. So Carolina and San Francisco were the two teams he struggled against, and Sleeper has those two teams as bad matchups against Marvin Harrison Jr. And as a result, he got 4 points and 7 points. Week 1, on the other hand, Sleeper says the New Orleans cornerbacks are a good matchup against Harrison. Harrison got 18 points that week. So Sleeper is now predicting Tennessee to be a good matchup against Marvin Harrison. Good for Marvin Harrison, that is, not good as in competitive.
Right.
So yeah, I agree. When it's a bad matchup against Harrison, bench him. But when it's a good matchup against him, he's shown that you can start him. He is a very matchup-based wide receiver.
I tend to
according
agree.
to statistics so far.
Yeah, and so we're in agreement. Am I 4 for 4 right now? On agreements with you?
That, so we're gonna you said that, so we're gonna disagree on this next one, I'm sure.
I don't think so, because I saved the best for last.
Oh.
The Cincinnati Bengals running back versus the Detroit Lions, Chase Brown. I will hold steadfast on my principles. I will not give up on what I believe in. Similar to what you said about Minnesota, the Lions have a great run defense. They win the line of scrimmage every week. Chase Brown will not do well this game.
Just to kind of give some kind of argument. Let me look at Brown. Let me try and give some kind of thing, because I don't want to agree with you 5 for 5. I don't like agreeing with you, Zach.
It's the reason we started this whole thing.
Literally. So, Brown had I don't have an argument. Brown's got no good stats this year. He had 13 points off 75% snap counts in week 1 at Cleveland. I have no argument. Swipe left.
Against a similar run defense in Minnesota, to provide actual statistical context, he had 10 carries for 3 yards. That's an average yards of carry of 0.3. If that's not enough evidence to send this guy to the deepest depths of your bench this game, I don't know what is. But that concludes our fantasy football Tinder segment of the week. Time for our must-watch matchups. Take it away, Tyler.
So this is our first week where we have bye weeks. So the Falcons, Bears, Packers, and Steelers are on a bye week. But that does leave a couple good matchups. The first must-watch game of the week is going to be on Thursday night, 49ers at Rams. We have Purdy back. We have a division rival. We have teams that I think have a shot to fight for a playoff spot, for a division championship. So we've got a good division championship battle coming on Thursday Night Football in SoFi Stadium, 49ers versus Rams. I think that's going to be a really good game. With it being a divisional game, anything can happen regardless of how good the teams are anyway. And I think the teams are pretty solid when they have healthy rosters. So that is my first one. My second one is the team who announced a brand new stadium recently, facing a team in a brand new stadium recently. It is Commanders at Chargers. The legislature has announced that the Washington Commanders are coming back to Washington. Hail to old DC. They're getting a new stadium in a handful of years, but they're going back to RFK Stadium. But in addition to coming back, Jaden Daniels is projected to come back as well for the Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels versus Justin Herbert. Once again in SoFi Stadium. I'm 2 for 2 in SoFi Stadium this week. But Commanders versus Chargers, 2 playoff teams really fighting for a shot for a division title, perhaps, or at least a seed in the playoffs. I think that's going to be a good game as well. Washington Commanders at at LA Chargers. That is my other game of the week. And then finally, I think this is a little bit of a sleeper pick, but it is Buccaneers at Seahawks. This is a 3-1 Buccaneers versus a 3-1 Seattle Seahawks. These are teams that are quietly having really good years. And I think it's going to be a good game. Seattle's had some good games. Playmaker Baker's had good games as well. This could possibly be a wild card matchup this January. So a little preview for a possible January wild card matchup that I would be keeping my eye on as well. And then it's not my game of the week, but because I'm a Chiefs fan, Chiefs at Jaguars, Monday Night Football.
Fantastic. I am pumped for all those matchups. I'm surprisingly excited now that you said that Seahawks Bucks game is happening. That's one I want to watch. 2 3-1 squads. It's hard to ignore the potential playoff implications in the NFC for that one. So I like all your picks. Cannot wait to watch week 5 of the NFL. But thank you all for watching. We'll see you next week. Same time.
Appreciate you guys.